Thank you very much. Welcome to the Town of Rocky Mountain House regular council meeting for July 4th of 2023. I'm going to call the meeting to order. First order of business is our acknowledgement of Indigenous peoples. The Town of Rocky Mountain House wishes to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is Treaty 6 territory and a traditional meeting ground and home for many Indigenous people, including the Blackfoot, Cree, Saulteaux, Stoney, and Métis. The adoption of the agenda for July 4th, 2023. Do we have any items to add or delete? Seeing none, would somebody like to make a motion? Councillor Chappell.
I'll also make that motion and we approve the agenda as circulated.
Thank you very much. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Today I'm happy to welcome a delegation with Kyle Scholl. I hope I say that even close, Kyle, and Scott Miller, and they are from the North Saskatchewan Heritage River Initiative. So, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a presentation. I can share my screen if that's appropriate. I'll just get that set up right now.
That sounds great. Thank you very much.
Excellent. And while I'm doing that, I'll just mention that I am joined, I'll do introductions first. So myself, planning technician with Smoky Lake County, which, if I did the math correctly, I think is about 8 days downriver from Rocky Mountain House. I'm joined by Scott Miller, the Executive Director for the North Saskatchewan Watershed Alliance, and I'm also joined by Leif Olsen of O2 Planning and Design. O2 acted as the lead consultant on the draft report, which is back before Council. And the reason, really at its core, why we're back before Council now is that Council, well, first of all, was one of the very early supporters of this work, going back all the way to 2019. And then more recently, last year, provided a resolution in support of the ACP grant, which has funded this most recent work as well. And under that grant, we committed to returning to our partners prior to finalizing the document. And so I believe you've had an opportunity to look at that. We've also invited participation administratively through an advisory committee. We'll cover all that, but we'll try to not drone on too much and get straight to questions if there do so happen to be some of those. So I think that's coming through correctly, yes? Okay, I see a nodding head. Just quickly to acknowledge, and first of all, I hope you had an excellent Canada Day long weekend. I apologize if I'm not quite at my best because I was climbing a mountain and I'm burnt to a crisp, so I'll do my best. Suffice to say, there have been many hands involved in getting the draft concept plan to the stage where it's at now. We would certainly be remiss not to mention that the study area does focus in Treaties 6 and 8. There are also many First Nations in Treaty 7 with traditional territories that touch upon the North Saskatchewan. The consultant team, as I mentioned, led by O2, included Pipiquan Petequan, Associated Environmental Expedition Management Consulting, Kerwood Lydell, and No History. And we owe a debt of gratitude to each of those groups for the input and collaboration that have got us to this point. Additionally, the North Saskatchewan Watershed Alliance and EPCOR have provided some really critical inputs to this as well, and so we're grateful to them as well. So pictured here, we have kind of the working cover, the draft. It's not been made pretty yet, but as I mentioned off the top, we do have a draft document that we've been working on ultimately since August of last year, at which time the Alberta government and the Canadian government jointly announced that they had accepted the nomination of the North Saskatchewan and Alberta to the Heritage River family. And that paved the way for us to complete this last step of the journey, a holistic or commemorative, honorific, non-statutory concept plan, which basically talks a bit about some of the work that's already happening and kind of the vision for the next 10 years in terms of where do we want to go in the storytelling, the placemaking, and the personal connection to this place that really has helped define the province. And the purpose of this document, again, as I just mentioned, is to, number one, achieve that national recognition for this river from the Banff National Park boundary to where the river flows into the province of Saskatchewan. It's to serve as that blueprint, as I was just mentioning. And then thirdly, it's to support the sustainable growth of tourism and recreation. And so I listened with interest recently when town council was discussing your future plans for the Riverside Park in town as well. And certainly town of Rocky Mountain House has a deep personal connection to river as well. Again, study area, 718 kilometers long. What we did do is break that down into a series of reaches, which makes it a little bit more easily consumable in bite-sized chunks that add up to about 1 or 2 day or 3 day, as the case may be, floats from put in to take out. And a little known fact as well that the North Saskatchewan as an overall system actually is the second largest in Canada. The nomination spoke to a lot of the reasons why this portion of river deserves to be celebrated and shared not just with visitors but also with our own residents. There's a lot of pride already around this river, and so this is aiming to lean into that. And this has been a project a long time in the making too. So Smoky Lake County really took up the project in 2019, as I mentioned, but it's been ongoing for a number of years, and that's just kind of basically what this slide is meant to illustrate. Over the winter and into the spring, we undertook quite a comprehensive engagement. We heard from a variety of groups, recreation groups, conservation groups, industry, and undertook a number of workshops and workbooks. All of that input has been encapsulated in a series of What We Heard reports, which is appended to the document and has helped inform where we went with this document. Additionally, Pipikon Petikon specifically engaged with or sought to engage with more than 40 First Nations across Western Canada with cultural connectivity to this place. That is inclusive of your neighbors at Ochis First Nations as well. A couple of bullet points in terms of some of the themes that came out of engagement and certainly that flow out of the nomination document, which your MLA at the time, Minister Jason Nixon, did sign last year. And so this will not be too new for town council, so I won't linger too much, but suffice to say that the project aims to make space for storytelling ultimately, and there's opportunities around pursuing collaborative grants, for example, community facility enhancement projects, signage projects with Alberta Culture, for example, and that sort of thing. Part of the work very much was to come up with a proposed governance structure as well as vision. One of the learnings that struck me personally during the engagement, for example, was the importance of place naming and awareness of traditional knowledge, for example. So quite often within the document, we refer actually to the North Saskatchewan as Kisiskatchewanisipi, which it takes some practice to say, and I certainly have a long way to go to be saying it correctly. I know that for a fact, but that was an intentional choice that we've made to integrate things like that into the document. And really the vision here being that Kisiskatchewanisipi's diverse heritage values are recognized and stewarded, strengthening thriving communities connected by the river's landscape and history. And there's a series of principles and goals and actions which underpin the work. These are just a selection of a couple of the key actions under each of the thematic pillars of culture, recreation, and natural heritage. So those are all within the document, and I won't dwell unless there's any questions on any individual one of them. Suffice to say that different partners and different groups, like, for example, the David Thompson Tourism Region, Explore Nordegg, for example, are going to be more actively seized, obviously, with more of the tourism and recreation actions than, say, conservation actions, which would be the wheelhouse of other groups, for example. Additionally, the plan is, as I mentioned off the top, holistic, meaning that the decision-making remains in the jurisdictions and places that they are today. There's no new regulatory requirements under the designation whatsoever. It's non-statutory, so there's no legal status that results as an outcome of this. And really, it's an avenue, it's a vehicle to create new partnerships is really the value add where this comes in. Here we have ultimately an implementation and reporting structure. And what this is meant to illustrate ultimately is that there are a number of partners with an interest in this space. It's a multifaceted space. Certainly, groups like Parks Canada, the province, NGOs, industry, and tourism all have cross-cutting themes here, and so they're all involved in the process. It bears mentioning that kind of in the center there, you see core partners, which will undertake actually the annual and then the slightly more detailed decadal or 10-year reports to monitor progress and any good policy evaluation or program evaluation. You have to monitor to see how you're doing, and that's ultimately what's going on there that you see here in this graphic. So again, commemorative, intended to create new partnerships. So by working with Parks Canada at the Rocky Mountain House Historic Site, for example, collaborating with Eagle Point Blue Rapids Park Council, City of Edmonton, we're creating new opportunities to embark on a Voyageur canoe and experience the landscape in an immersive and experiential way. So it's certainly our hope that the town of Rocky Mountain House would continue to be actively involved and participate in the advisory committee moving forward. Our next steps, as I mentioned, involve kind of finalizing the document among partners this summer. We intend to make a presentation to the Heritage Rivers Board in September, after which ultimately the document will get again endorsed by the Minister for the Province of Alberta, the Minister for the Government of Canada, and then of course everybody is very much welcome to a celebration at Métis Crossing, where we'll celebrate the achievement of this recognition, which has been overdue, a long time coming, and I think is going to contribute to the wellness of our communities ultimately. So with that, you've had to listen to my voice for a few minutes now, but we're very happy to entertain any questions. And of course, if necessary, I know that Scott and Leif will endeavor to assist me as well. So I'll just stop sharing my screen, and back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. So I think I'll open it up to the floor for any questions today that we have. My question is, what day do you plan on having the event at Métis Crossing?
I appreciate the question, Madam Mayor. That's a bit premature to have set a date quite yet. We have a few hoops to jump through, but I would anticipate, fingers crossed, that an invitation would be coming your way for next summer.
Thank you.
And if I may, just to say that I think I neglected to mention this, and I'm repeating myself from this morning. I was at Parkland County this morning, so I apologize having missed this in the presentation, but suffice to say that if any council feel that later you're rereading it and you come up with questions, you're very welcome to reach out to our council at the political level or myself offline as well. As the document is in draft, and this would be the time if you notice that perhaps we've neglected to include something at Rocky Mountain House that you want to showcase in a stronger way. This is very much part and parcel of why we're here today. So I think I neglected to mention that specifically, and I wanted to re-articulate that.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate your openness for further input from us. Rocky Mountain House has been, and I'm sure you're aware, involved with a number of events, usually starting on Canada Day, and Voyagers will paddle from there to, I believe it's Hudson Bay. And actually, there's quite a few people in Rocky that have participated with that event. I know it's been hosted a number of times, but we certainly recognize the importance of the North Saskatchewan River, and especially when you attend with the being Canada Day on the weekend at the National Historic Park. So if there's no further questions, I just wanted, actually, Councillor Hutchinson, and then I have a final comment.
I just had a comment. I had sat in on the working draft workshop that you guys presented, I think it was in May, I believe it was. Anyways, the draft of that document, can that be shared with council? Or is it just kind of waiting until it comes out?
Thank you, Councillor, and through the chair. It was our intention that that document should have made its way to you already, and so certainly we would welcome that to be the case. It is posted as well on the project website, and it is publicly available, freely available for review. So definitely very much. I know that town administration is I would say resource constrained, just like everybody, and so I'm aware that maybe they weren't able to attend some of our advisory committee meetings. I'm glad that you yourself were able to, and certainly please do let me know if that hasn't made its way to you here in the next short little while.
Okay, thank you. And so today, generally your main purpose is to get feedback on the report and just present the information. And further to that, just to be aware of what's going on, there's no specific ask today for this. Okay, excellent. Just want to make sure that I'm not missing what you're asking for.
Madam Mayor, yeah, we're fulfilling a commitment we made to you to be open and transparent. So that's very much why we're here today, to accept for information, hopefully at council's will.
Okay, well, I see no further questions or comments this morning. So again, I wanted to thank you so very much for bringing this to our attention and your presentation today. And I guess when there's no questions, that's also, or comments, that's a good sign. So thank you very much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, and we wish you luck with the remainder of your agenda.
Thank you. So moving forward in the agenda today then, we have 5.1, adoption of previous minutes. Does anybody find any errors or omissions from the June 20th, 2023 meeting minutes? Seeing none, would someone like to make a motion? It was a race. Councillor Phillips.
Yes, I guess I won that race. I'll make a motion to adopt the minutes of the June 20th, 2023 meeting.
Thank you very much. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So now with 6.1, delegation business, would someone like to accept for information the presentation that we had? Councillor Hutchinson.
I just wanted to maybe comment that there's a lot of work that's been done on that document already, and maybe that's a direction we might want to look at for our Riverside Park, maybe to take some ideas and some initiatives off there to put into a plan. That was just a comment, so I would lost my thought.
Make a resolution for accepting for information.
I will do so, yeah. Thanks.
So, thank you very much, Councillor Hutchinson. If there's no other further questions or comments on that motion, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So, moving forward in the agenda, we're at 7.1, old business, and we have an RFD for airport hangar access road ditch improvements. And Mr. Kraus.
Yep, thank you, Your Worship. So council may recognize this from last year. So last year we brought forward a ditching project for the airport, and council approved the budget for that, and that was in the operating budget. That project did go out for quotes and was, a quote was accepted to do it. Due to manpower and timing, that actually didn't get done by the end of 2022, even though we had commitment from the contractor that they could still do it in December, but then we hit frost and so forth, so it didn't proceed. And by then, we already passed the 2023 budget, so it's not in this year's budget. So we're still looking to get that project done, because it's desperately needed at the ditch at the airport for the access road to the hangars. So this did go to ICC for their consideration, and they did approve a resolution to rise and report to both councils to amend the 2023 budget to have this ditching project complete. I know Clearwater County passed the resolution last week to approve their portion of the budget of $18,000 for a total project cost of $36,000. So administration is looking to council to amend our 2023 airport budget for this project to proceed.
I just have a quick question. So the money that we set aside in 2022 for the project, that just go into reserves?
That became
Then-
part of the surplus for 2022.
Okay, so we didn't spend the money?
No.
It's just that because we're into a new calendar year, we need to make a new resolution?
That's correct, new budget.
Just to clarify. Does anybody else have any questions or comments about that? Counselor Hutchinson?
I just had a question on the recommended alternative is only stating 30,000. Is that just a misprint?
Yeah, sorry, Your Worship, that is a typo. It should be 36,000.
I will then, make the resolution that be resolved that council amend the 2022 airport operating budget by 36,000 for the purpose of grading the ditches with the funds coming from unrestricted reserves.
Thank you very much. If there's no further questions or comments on that motion or agenda topic, I'll call that to a vote. Seeing none, all in favor of that motion? And that's carried, and thank you very much. So moving forward in the agenda, 7.2, the civic building public engagement. Okay.
Yes, I have to put myself on screen. No, I'm gonna go over there.
I know we moved surprisingly quickly through the beginning of the agenda today. So let's give you another minute to get moved over.
Thank you very much, Mayor and Council. So you may recall at your last committee of the whole meeting, the second discussion councils had about a civic building for the town of Rocky Mountain House. At that time, Ms. Quinlan went through the deficiencies in this one identified some 12 years ago and again last year. And council is interested in pursuing what a new civic building may look like. And council was keen to talk to the public about it, which I think is a really great idea. It's important to get public buy-in and support for a project in the early stages. However, this is not a project yet. This is still just an idea. And so we don't have much to tell public or to ask public about the actual project, which is why the couple of public engagement plans before you, or the public engagement plan before you, is pretty hypothetical. Because we haven't committed any money, any dollars, any time to it, but it's input that you'd like before you start doing that. So it's very much council's engagement process, because administration, like I said, it's not a project of ours yet. So it's still very much a council driven engagement, which is why it's laid out the way it is. So I have a couple of items I just want to point out. I know you've all got the report in front of you. But here it is. So obviously your Coffee with the Counselor is a great spot to ask people about it. You can have direct conversations one-on-one with members of the public, and you can do that at any time you meet with residents of Rocky Mountain House. To supplement those conversations, I have created a bit of an online survey, and it's attached to your agenda package as well. Really 3 basic questions. What else do you want to see in a building like this? Any sort of themes you want? And are you a resident of the town? Just collecting that basic demographic. I believe it was Councillor Boniface that said, we only need one good idea. So this is the opportunity to get residents of Rocky Mountain House to give us their one good idea in their own words in writing. So it's a simple survey. I really would like to see it people invited to do it rather than a blanket push out, tell us, because we're going to get a lot of things saying, should we build a building? Well, no, or yes. As council knows from February and last week, it's really hard to come to that decision, even with all of the documents in front of you. And so to ask members of the public to do the same without all of that background info that you had and were able to digest for several months is tricky. We do have those 2 reports that council reviewed, as well as Ms. Quinlan's report to council. We can include them on our website. I mean, they already are as part of the public agenda package, but we can link them directly to the survey if people want to read the details, read about the hazardous materials in our building. They can, but that is there. So that was Coffee with the Counselor. The other one is Marketplace on Main. Again, exactly the same as above, coffee. This time, though, we could have the survey available on a tablet. It was Councillor Hutchinson that said, hey, town did really well with the rec master plan update a few years ago, so I reached out to my colleagues in rec to make sure I could copy their method of the technology out there on the street and how it worked. So that is also very easy to set up if council would like to go ahead with that. Obviously, publish the online survey to the town website. As per that, share it to our social media channels and with our website registrants and in the utilities newsletter. The final piece was, so if we want to reach the people that already use the civic building, then we should have some engagement right here. And so to me, that looks like a public engagement board, something much larger than this, just set up in the lobby that asks the exact same questions, including copies, printed hard copies of the report, the feasibility, the building assessment and the feasibility study as well, with a quick little paper survey for people to fill out and put in. And that can sit in the town hall all summer or less or more. And so those were the ideas and the engagement plan I've put together for council's consideration today. The reason for really driving it as a council engagement process in your face-to-face conversations is, as Councillor Phillips will know, and you all will from reading his report with the Bucking the Trend conference at the end of April, is that the face-to-face conversations are really important for eliminating the trolls that you meet online. And so that's why, and because this is very early in the process, we want to catch people in person and tell them this is where you can put your info in, so that. Something else that's very important, I think, for council to know, and it's a little bit in the, well, council already knows, pardon me, for the public to know, and I have included it in the preamble, is that with the 10-year capital plan and the long-term debt servicing plan, there has been a placeholder in our budget on our books for several years now. So Betty can explain how she plans for it, but as various payments drop off, then we can plan. There's space in your budget in your debt ratio? No. In the debt payments, pardon me, for a new facility. And so it's very likely that when if the project moves ahead, it would be financed through reserves. No, reserves and debenture. Thank you, Betty. Betty and I spent a lot of time together last week. It's important that in those conversations with members of the public, you're letting them know we have a placeholder, we haven't committed to it, but the town is in a strong financial position and can take on a project of this magnitude if we choose to do so. So we want to hear your ideas. So I think that was the last point I wanted to make before I ask for your questions, or if I can provide any other comments.
I'll go to Councillor Chappelle first, and then Councillor Phillips, and then Councillor Chappelle. I was writing some notes before.
Just a comment on this, I really like that we're doing this public engagement before we start going to the design phase. As Councillor Boniface has said, it only takes one good idea. And if we can get the public to really engage in this, we can take this project from potentially just a town hall to maybe something bigger, better, and brighter, and more bolder for our future. So I really like this, and I hope we get some good engagement, and I hope we get some really good ideas.
Thank you very much, Councillor Chappelle.
Well, I'm going to piggyback on Councillor Phelps, because I agree this is a great start. The only couple comments I'd make is under number 1, where you, in the preliminary public input survey,
Yep,
where you list the items that building could include.
yep,
I'm thinking that we should try to get them noodling maybe, or get public noodling on more opportunities or more options, say, which could include, new fire hall, next to new seniors drop-in center, all the other buildings that are occupied by people right now. Our town infrastructure is getting old, and maybe we have to have a vision into the next 50 years what Rocky Mountain also look like. And so I guess where I'm at, just to put more examples that could be available, that the building could house, just to get people thinking as to what's going on. And then the next question, or next thought, is under number 3, where it says, are you a resident of Rocky Mountain House? I think it's important to know if they're a homeowner or a renter. And the reason I think that is that a homeowner pays tax directly. And there'll be an indicator here, there's going to be a cost to having a new civic building. And their perception of that cost could be different than a renter who indirectly does pay the tax, but does not maybe view it on the same level as an actual homeowner or business owner would. So I'm just wondering if we should add, do you rent in there, homeowner in Rocky Mountain House renting, homeowner in Rocky Mountain House, physically owning. Just so somebody might have just a more in-depth understanding of taxation. So that's sort of my 2 thoughts.
If I could add to that, because that's one of my things, is I know on the rec one, we did, do you own a business in town? Because businesses also pay taxes, and they directly pay taxes. However, they don't always have a say electorally, because they may own a business in town and yet live in the county. So I like that you put resident of a nearby municipality, but I'd like to add in there, are you a business owner in the town? Do you live in town? Do you live out of town? Just because I think those people have really voiced that they would like to have a voice. If they have a business in town, they're paying taxes and they're part of our community, but yet they might not necessarily have a direct voting say because they live in the county of Clearwater.
those are easily added, council, if council chooses. Yeah.
Awesome. I wanted to add a couple more, because I would really like some, it's really broad, the questions
Yeah.
that we're asking. And it's not that it's vague, because we want them to come up with ideas, but sometimes to get good feedback, you feed off a question that you're asked, and then that sparks your brainstorming. So I would like to ask, is there a civic building you've had experience with that you would like us to review, and why? And what features do you like? Like, lots of us have mentioned certain other civic buildings that we've noticed, and I think that's where you get good information. If somebody's, why rework the wheel if some other community that has done a great job, just to give us a little bit more clear.
Mayor, I did toy with that question in my mind, like, how did I put this? So,
Yeah.
we were on the same track there.
Okay. And then, what other community services would you like to see incorporated? Like, but I meant more like, I would like to see some, maybe some, like, I know you have it on there, but I think we need to put a broader list. And what I mean is like, the Lions don't have a place to meet. The Kinsmen don't have a place to meet. You know, the Assoquans thinking about future expansion. Some of the buildings that we looked at is like, do you feel, like, I don't know how specific we should be, but the more specific we are, then maybe we'll get better feedback.
I do have community rental space there.
Okay.
But we can, include the words,
Like, are you gonna do like a little box checklist like you did with the rec one?
I wasn't, because we need one good idea, and they can't just be the ideas the words that I came up with. So I really want it to be open-ended for them to put them in, but that's why some examples could be. And then, because if you give people an option, they're going to check everything, because they want everything, right?
Okay.
But I can include, nonprofit organization meeting space as one of the examples that could be.
Okay.
So if people like that, they can say, hey, yes, I'd like one of those examples.
Okay. And then what about the actual, like, some of the questions that I have, like, you've kind of put it on there, but here's like a specific question that might trigger a conversation. And then it would be, do you feel we need a gallery space for spectators?
Like
And-
in our council chambers.
Yes. And that just is because we don't necessarily, it's a good question. Like, some people's vision is that there's like a big theater-like space, right? And some people they don't have space at all. Like, just, like, if we're gonna do a good job, that'd be a question that I would like to have an answer to. And then I would like a little bit more questions on, do you feel that you would choose a similar location? Like, a location was one of the questions that we really discussed.
Yes.
Do we not want to go there with the survey at all?
So I don't, and the reason was, and bounced this idea around a lot last week with my colleagues, is that there's a lot of other considerations for location. We're talking about parking, we're talking about the underground utilities, the internet availability, access to SuperNet, that type of thing. That some of those things our hands are going to be tied with, so you can't give the public a choice if they don't have a say over it. And that might be something that they won't have a say over, because we may be very limited in our choices on that, because of all those other considerations.
Okay.
And so that's kind of one of the rules of thumb of public engagement is, don't ask them if they want the building red or blue if you're only going to paint it green anyway, right? And so I'm just afraid that we'll get people's hopes up, because it may turn out to be something that for whatever reason, we have very few choices in the matter. Those were my thoughts.
So then,
and my
the
comments.
last thing that I would ask is, what purpose do you think this new building, what is your most important goal of the building? Would it be the financial burden on the community, the cost of the building? Would it be that it's a showplace for the community? Because that could be one of the things that people would put up. Would it be the impression that it gives people coming to town? Like, do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then, or is it just for today and we're not thinking about, so future growth would be like my third one. Because those are the questions that we really kind of kicked around that I'd like some feedback specifically on. I don't know how everybody else feels, but I like some vague and some specific questions to give us more. We could do we could do a survey again after we, need to. I just like the more information we can get to specific questions that I have. Like, I don't know what the community would like. Would they be like, if it's a question between a little bit of money and a beautiful, statement for our community, would it be money versus future growth for offices and social services, and should it just only be, you know what I mean? Because you'd be surprised maybe what people will respond. That's sort of things. Does anybody else have anything they wanted to add? I'm again really happy with, and I think this is just great. These are answers that I need to know. Councillor Hutchinson.
Was there any consideration on putting a box there with additional comments? Do we want to open that up?
We absolutely can, yeah. I was trying to keep it short and sweet, but yes, we could put additional comments. I'm looking for like valuable feedback, and council has seen some of the feedback that comes through other times. And we have lots of forums for getting in touch with the town of Rocky Mountain House. There's lots of channels people can use, and sometimes they always use that and additional comments. It's like, this could have been a phone call to our peace officers, because it's not something that, that type of thing, but I absolutely can. And that might be a great spot to ask, you know, additional comments. Council's particularly keen to know what your priorities are for a new civic building in the town of Rocky
Well, I
Mountain
just
House.
think
Yeah.
like a priority list of
Yeah.
just, cause it could be just like number, like when I get surveys, sometimes they'll say, here's 10 things, pick your top 3, or number them in order of importance. I like the number in order of importance, because then you know how many people say that it's number 1. And I think that's what the rec department one was like.
Yeah.
It said like, here's 5 things, and out of these 5 things, number them in order of priority.
I want to assure council that it was a conscious decision not to do that, simply because many of these things like fire hall, seniors drop-in, or even next to new, would require third-party involvement. And at this stage of your planning, it's just a concept, right? We have no plans. So to put them in order of priority for people, to say fire hall co-located is my number 1, well, that might not actually align with the other stakeholders in that conversation. And so that's why it was we can go that route, but I just want council to know that it's a deliberate reason
I
not to.
didn't mean for what services do you think would be, I meant for the question of what's the most important? Is
Right.
it the cost of the building? Is it the stature of the building, like the impression? Is it future growth of the building?
Okay.
Those 4 questions. If you could list those in order of importance, that would give me a really good idea of what direction we need to go in for council.
I was not clear, Mayor, on that you had made that differentiation, so
Yeah,
I am now, thank you.
Sorry about that
Yeah.
for not being clear. Councillor Hutchinson, I see something else has come to mind.
Yeah, I was just curious about a timeline. Is there any consideration on how long we do this for? When are we looking at possibly, like, we just found out with the airport bill that you wait another year, and the wastewater, another year and another year, and our dollar number is going up and up and up. So do we have any kind of timeline?
So that's really beyond my pay grade in terms of timeline. At this point, the only resolution council has passed for a civic building is to engage the public at an early stage. Where it goes from there, I will defer to Mr. Kraus, who could maybe paint a picture for what council's timeline could look like.
Yeah, what sort of a deadline do you want us to have on this, Mr. Kraus?
Well, Your Worship, that's up to council in the budgeting process. I think this year we did budget to do some preliminary design, but that still hasn't been approved by council yet. It's in the budget, but we still need a go-ahead from council to do that. So, I mean, we're already halfway through this year, so design, I mean, we're probably talking 2 months for the results of this survey. So we're really talking, you know, for fall budget discussions. So earliest design in 2024, construction 2025 would be like the absolute earliest probably.
Okay, I'm just, like in our resolution, if we have to put a time, because that turns it into money, right? For what we have to do today.
What today is just the survey, so you can put, you know, open the survey for a period of, do you have a
2 months?
2 months?
Yeah.
Because I just see
No.
that it's
By
And I
then
think
you-
that's where we're going, is that I don't see anything in our resolutions for timelines for this, for the engagement.
I will assure you that was an oversight on my part. And my part alone for not having a timeline,
No.
a time in there, no.
No, not at all. It's just that
It was.
whenever we make resolutions, I've learned now that Mr. Kraus will come back and say, and when would you like that to happen?
And I should also have anticipated that, so I'll take that one.
So 2 months would be a reasonable amount of time to have the public, say could say, so now with summer holidays, would we want to go 1 week? Could we say into like the first 2 weeks of September? Because there's a lot of people that maybe are, sort of off grid with summer holidays.
Well, depending on what council chooses, changes to make to the survey, there will be a day or two of work to get it. So we're looking at mid-July to kick off anyway. So mid-July to mid-September
So
would
2
be
months is
what I'm
reasonable.
looking at, yeah.
Thank you.
welcome.
There's no point in us saying that we'd like it done in so many weeks and it's like not a possibility, right? So, Counselor Hutchinson.
Just with those dates in mind, the utility newsletter, September 15th, does the billing go out for utilities? On the
Goes out every month.
On the 15th, just to extend, to make sure that there's, if it's in the utility newsletter, it's in there for 2 full months.
It could get in,
Well, we missed July, right? But
we
could
haven't
get it-
missed July yet. That newsletter hasn't been done yet.
What day does that go out?
I need to have it done for printing by the 12th of July.
Oh, so
Yeah.
would there be enough time to have this, is that your question?
And if it doesn't have time to be into July, that we put it in for October, September, so that would mean the survey would be extended.
Till
into
September
Sep-
30th.
Yeah, that was kind of my thoughts.
So if we, because you're magic, we don't want to put pressure on you that it's not achievable, right? That gives you 10 days.
I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver.
Right.
either. So if you want to keep it open till September 30th, that will for
That,
sure
that would
give
make
you
sure we
2
have
full
two
cycles.
for sure month.
And then if it comes out in the September newsletter again, then people still have 2 weeks. Once
Right.
it comes out in the newsletter, rather than saying,
That sounds
make sure
reasonable.
you do it today because it closes tomorrow.
Counselor Phillips,
So
now.
rather than a period of 2 months, it would
Sorry.
be, proceed with public engagement until September 30th. If that jives with, Mr. Kraus's timelines for all the other pieces that would have to fall in line. Following that.
In reality, this is going to service level review for discussion
So
by the
that
time we hit.
gives us
so,
time.
yeah.
Okay.
Do you think we should have a longer time for, or do you think that's just enough?
Well,
Is that your question?
So your worship, it's enough. It depends if council wants us to bring back the revised survey for another review.
I always like to see lots of questions, but I think the sooner we can get going, the better. So we wouldn't be able to bring it back until the 18th, and it would be nice to hit the July. I'm getting a lot of nods. So I think we would just leave it up to you. We've given lots of, does anybody else have any ideas more for the survey before we, so then we don't have to come back for review? Does that make sense? Okay, so that makes it clear enough. Does anybody, Councillor Phillips, you don't have a
No, I was gonna suggest earlier on in this debate that we had it end at September 30th, but we came to that in the roundabout way, it came to September 30th, so.
For my own clarification, you'd like to move ahead with what you have, including a few additional demographic questions to differentiate between homeowners, renters, and business owners. Add a field for additional comments at the end, and then ask if they have any civic buildings they visited that they particularly like, and then a priority list that include things for them to prioritize those things that include the design, cost, future growth, showpiece, gallery space in chambers, community access. Which of those aspects are your priority.
Can I just ask a random question, because I was thinking about it, and I know we didn't discuss it, but is there any space that would overlap usage with the county? I know they're also looking at construction of a building. And when we look at that report for amalgamation, and with the way downloading and everything else is happening, a question I had was, could we ever foresee having a building like they did the high school with Catholic education on one side and public, and then the Red Deer Poly on the other? Would it ever be a possibility, you know, because we only have council chamber, say, once a week, same, like, that we could share, like, build it together and share common spaces? Like, it would be a lunchroom, it would be this room, it would be meeting rooms, as a cost savings for all of us. Has that ever thought about? Because maybe we could both save money, because there was huge pushback when they talked about their building, and they're wanting to build and we're wanting to build. Do you know what I'm saying? I know that's something we never discussed, but how would that look? Could we put that in our survey, or could we put it, how would we, I don't know. I just come up with ideas, I don't know how to do the next step. Councillor Hutchinson.
I would just question whether we had the space in town. I mean, a building to house both municipalities would have to be exceptionally large. And I know, I don't think we have space in town to do that, and to move the town municipal office onto a county location, to me, isn't, I feel we like to have the town hall more or less in the center of town, and to become more of a showcase. So, as much as I think the idea of, saving money, working together would be great, I don't know if it's practical.
But there is town land. Like, we've already talked about developers. It's just an idea. Councillor Phillips?
Although I do enjoy the conversation and the topic of amalgamation, because I do think it is a topic that eventually we will end up going down. I think before we could put a question like that in our survey, we would have to have a conversation with the county first before we start putting questions like that in our survey, just so we're not ruffling the feathers of our partners in the county. So I would suggest that we maybe don't at this point, although the topic of amalgamation is definitely something I think in the future should be had.
Yeah, and it wasn't so much even for amalgamation. It would be for, like, shared common resources. But I'm totally happy we can end the discussion today. I just wanted to bring up another idea while we're at the idea table before we get too far in and then miss the opportunity. So would somebody like to make a motion to move forward with the public engagement so that Laura knows what direction we're going in? Councillor Phillips.
I'd like to make a motion that council proceed with the preliminary public engagement regarding a new civic building with the amendments, with a due date of September 30th.
Thank you very much. And do we have any further questions or comments? And seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of that? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Thank you. So that completes 7.2. So then we have 7.3, the RFD for Central Alberta Economic Partnership, which is CAPE. And before us, Mr. Kraus, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So at the last council meeting, council passed a resolution to rejoin CAPE. Of course, that's an unbudgeted item, so we just bring this back for council to adjust the budget for the administration to proceed with doing the membership with CAPE, and also for council to appoint a representative to CAPE so we can advise them when we renew the membership.
Thank you very much. I certainly would really be interested in attending the CAPE meetings. I feel very passionately that it would be, you know, our participation is important, and I already do a number of other meetings like that. So I'd like to put myself forward as being on the committee. Counselor, sorry, Counselor Hutchinson.
As this isn't an item that's in our budget, I would like to see this postponed until after service level review or budget review, and put it into our 2024 budget. That would be the alternative number 2.
So I think that we all are aware of the financial cost to this, but moving forward with, you know, lobbying the government on Highway 11 through town limits specifically, and some of our strategic plans about moving forward with growth and development, you know, anything that we can do to start kind of supporting those, I think we should do it now. Counselor,
I would like to, I agree, I'd like to see us take option number 1 and join now. We've made the commitment to join. I see no reason to wait until 2024. It's not that much money. It's certainly within our means, and I would certainly support the mayor attending this because, as you said here, has a passion for it. Plus, if we wait another 6 months here to engage in this, where you lose 6 months of time with lobbying the government to bring the Highway 11 through. And one of the promises they made was to get other communities to sign letters in our support of bringing Highway 11 through. So I think it's something that's better done sooner rather than later.
thank you. Counselor Phillips, and then Counselor Hutchinson again.
I see both points. I mean, it's, unfortunately, we haven't budgeted for 2023. I do see also the need that, you know, if we are gonna start advocating, that we start now for sure. If we, you know, do decide that we're gonna do this now, I would also like to have my name considered being in CAPE as well, or for the appointee for CAPE. And there may be other council members that may want their name put in for that consideration as well.
Counselor Hutchinson.
I know they've already had their, recently they had an AGM. I am curious as to what upcoming meetings and how many they have. I reached out and nobody got back to me from CAPE on that. Wondering if anybody has any information, if they're every 2 months, I mean, we're in July, if there's only 1 or 2 meetings, are we really missing out on
It says in the
anything?
report, doesn't it?
I didn't see anything.
It says, based on 5 meetings for the remainder of the year, the travel expenses, where it says financial, on page 3 of 4. So my understanding then, from this point on, there would be 5 meetings left.
So, Your Worship, that was an estimate by administration. It's just
Okay.
not their regular meetings. I'm sure they have committee meetings that representatives may go to. So it was just a budgetary type of estimate.
Okay. You know, it's pretty hard to get that information until we're in, and then I haven't seen anything further back from them either, but I think we need to move forward. But is there anybody else? Do you have something more to say, Counselor Hutchinson?
No, I would be prepared to make a resolution.
Certainly.
Be it resolved that council postpone membership to the CAPE until 2024 and include the associated costs in the 2024 operating budget.
All right, so then that was different than what we just discussed, and I'll call that to a vote, and then we can always make another resolution. All in favor of that motion? And all opposed? And so that is, Tracy, what's my word? Not carried, defeated. So I think, Counselor Schiffelt, did you want to make a motion?
I'm going to try and see if I can get one to float. Be it resolved that council appoint Mayor Beach as the town representative and Councillor Phillips as the alternative to represent the town in the in the Cape Partnership, and that further that the 2023 operating budget be amended as follows: municipal memberships be increased by $5,412. Council honorarium being increased by $1,200, and the council travel be increased by $320 for the council representative, with these funds coming from the unrestricted surplus.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions or comments on that motion? Councillor Hutchinson?
Yes, just for Mr. Kraus then, will this membership come up in October when we review all of our appointments to
Yeah.
count, whatever they're,
So Kate
Yeah.
would be added to the committee list, and then it'd be reappointments in October at the organizational meeting.
You're welcome. So with no further questions or comments, I'll call that motion to a vote. All in favor of Councillor Chappelle's motion? And all opposed? None opposed, that's all carried then. Thank you very much. So moving forward in the agenda. I'm sorry, I'm just checking the time. We're good on time. Moving forward in the agenda, we have new business. So the RFD for policy 008/2023 Rocky Mountain House Airport Maintenance Policy. 8.1, Mr. Kraus.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So right now at the airport, we do have a winter maintenance policy that was adopted a few years ago. In review of it, administration felt that it could be expanded to include the rear year-round maintenance, which would provide clarity to all the stakeholders out there, and plus also establish a level of service that Clearwater County is comfortable with too, as their co-owners. So administration drafted a new maintenance policy. It's presented to the ICC, which was approved by the IC with a rising report to both councils to adopt. I know Clearwater County did review it last week at their meeting, and they did approve the policy as presented. So I will leave it up to council for discussion.
So who attended that ICC meeting? Was it Councillor? So, but there's only two on ICC, right? Okay, sorry. Would you like to make some comments, Councillor Phillips?
Yes, so the three of us are on ICC. This was a topic of discussion at our last ICC meeting with the county, and as Mr. Kraus had indicated, the result was to bring this back to both councils for ratification. So it's fairly simplistic.
Thank you very much. Would anybody else like any questions or comments? Would somebody like to make a motion? So, Councillor Caprero.
Be it resolved that council adopts Rocky Mountain House Airport Maintenance Policy 008/2023 and rescinds Rocky Mountain House Aerodome Winter Maintenance Policy 007/2021.
Thank you very much. Seeing that there's no further questions or comments on that motion, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. So you can reach. Councillor Hutchinson, I'm sorry, did you have something further to comment on
No.
that motion?
yeah, I just wanted to say thanks, and it was a great job done by staff to have that maintenance policy put in place.
All right, thank you very much. So moving forward in the agenda for new business, we're at 8.2, the RFD for airport terminal building.
Thank you, Your Worship. The airport terminal building, so this has been a ongoing topic for close to 4 years almost, which was basically put on hold until a new airport agreement was signed. But part of the process through the design of a new terminal building was a stakeholder engagement, open house during COVID, which was virtual, which the results are in the council's package, plus an online survey, which is also in council's package for the input from the stakeholders of the size of a terminal building and what's needed in a terminal building. There was 3 concept plans presented in those public engagement opportunities, with the one being the size closer to the existing terminal building of approximately 2,000 square feet. Plus a feasibility study was done by the engineering firm, which also recommended a building of about that size for its current use and a little bit for the future growth of the airport. So this was brought to ICC on a couple of weeks ago, and through discussion at the ICC did a rise and report resolution recommending to councils for approximately a 2,000 square foot building, but more or less limiting the budget to, well, it was 1.2 plus with contingency on it. But that also didn't include some other projects that need to go with it, like the Field Electrical Center and so forth. So, and plus some inflationary contingencies in it. So it's really like a $1.4 million total project. So that'd be $700,000 from each municipality for this project. Now, we do have an ACP grant that expires at the end of the year. That grant was for the feasibility study and design of the building. So to fully utilize that grant, we would need to get the design done by the end of December. This did also go to Clearwater County or last week, and they did accept the recommendation from the ICC for basically a 1.4 budget for the building, and which would approximately be about 2,000 square feet.
Does anybody have any questions or comments? So, Councillor Hutchinson.
Just a bit of clarity on, so we'd decided on the 1.4 million, the dollar amount, and the next step would be the design process would determine whether it's 2,000, 2,025, 2,000 to 2,150. It all will be dependent on what the engineering firms will come up with before the end of the year. Is that correct?
That's correct. So the instruction to the engineer saying the total budget for this project is 1.4, and now let's start designing within those parameters.
And they'll do the electrical building right away then, so that everything can get moved, so it's still operational while we do construction? Like when we were in the basement there, that's that whole panel for the lights, right?
Yeah, that's,
And
yeah.
we've talked about building that just like in a concrete building beside, is that what we're gonna do then?
Yeah, so the field electrical equipment would be moved to a small building, like we're talking like a very small building, just enough to house the electrical
Yeah, like a
equipment.
pump house or
And
something.
then that would be moved out, and then the demolition of the existing terminal building could start.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense to me to do that plan. That way the airport's still completely operational, and I like that we're staying on a tight budget. You know, like, we can't guess what prices are gonna be cost. I think the majority of the stakeholders will be really happy with staying as close to the original size as possible, with the exception of this electrical room. And will the electrical room then, will it be so that it can stay in there, or will it be put back into the,
No,
Okay,
no, Your
sorry.
Worship, it would stay there, and it's a lot better to have the field electrical
Yes.
equipment out of the main terminal building for multiple safety reasons and so forth.
right, I'm sorry, he's giving me nods, I know you're not supposed to, but I sort of met eyes with him,
No, that's,
and
no,
so
that's
that's
fine, he's in
perfect.
here to provide me the technical advice if I don't know, so, yeah.
So excellent, because that was one of the things when we did the tour, you know, of the facility that was brought up with us in that little basement. Councillor Phillips, and then Councillor Boniface, and then Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, just out of the 3 options that we had presented at the ICC meeting, this was the most economical of the 3 options. Unfortunately, the costs from original to now have gone up substantially, 40%. So it's still the most economical of the three options, just for our council's information.
Counselor Boniface.
I have a question, a couple things here. The demolition of the existing terminal at $140,000, that seems pretty excessively high for the demolition of that building, considering that the county is a partner with us and owns the landfill. So are they charging the town a portion to use their own landfill?
So, Your Worship, those estimates are like Class D estimates by the engineering firm. I mean, once we get down to the actual construction drawings and tender documents, you know, that's a discussion to have with Clearwater County, but they have to do cost recovery on the landfill too, so.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah.
My second question is, if we're moving the electrical out of the building, have we considered using a C-can? Many oil companies now are making their MCC buildings out of one-use C-cans. They're much more efficient, you can move them, they're self-contained, and they lock up so no one gets in them.
So, Your Worship, we haven't gone down to that detail yet, right? Well, those are options to be explored as we get into design. So.
Thank you.
Counselor Hutchinson.
I just, again, just to clarify, when we talked about moving that electrical building, and I believe Jim also mentioned about a temporary trailer that would be set up for him while the demolition is complete, is that correct?
Yes, and probably washrooms for public as well.
And public washrooms as well.
Like a job site trailer, just
Yeah.
something portable? Yeah.
And also that the plans that had been provided with all of our documents are just a conceptual design as well. And we kind of got a little bit hung up at our ICC meeting on, you know, well, this building has too many washrooms, and this plan has this, and this one has this. They're just a conceptual design to give us an idea of what could be put in there, and that, again, would be based on, here's the dollar amount, now what do we get for it?
That sounds fair to me. So, is there any further questions or comments? Would somebody like to move forward with the motion? Counselor Phillips.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that council instruct administration, I guess subject to the confirmation of Clearwater County Council, to proceed with the design of a 2,250 square foot airport terminal building.
Do you want
Do you want the cost in there as well?
Do you want the size in there or the dollar value? It should be the dollar value,
Yeah,
right?
Your Worship, so yeah, if it was a
Should be the
dollar
dollar.
value,
I'll amend
Yeah.
my motion to proceed with the design of a airport terminal building to the cost of 1.4 million.
1456. That's what it says in here. Option 2 is 1456. Or 1.4.
1.4 million.
1.4,
Yeah.
including contingency.
And that price includes the cost shack and the temporary, yeah,
We'll put it in one number.
okay, that sounds really good. Sorry for I just think it had to be the amount and not the square footage. So if there's no further questions or comments on that motion, and seeing none, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of that. And that's carried. Excellent. So, that concludes 8.2. I think maybe perhaps now would be a great place to take a 10-minute break before we start on the next 2-3 items. And then we're not breaking in the middle of a topic discussion. So we'll break for 10 minutes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. So welcome back to the Town of Rocky Mountain House agenda for July 4th of 2023. We're moving forward in the agenda and we're at 8.3, an RFD for wastewater agreement. Mr. Kraus.
So, thank you, Your Worship. So is, both Clearwater County and our council has directed administration to draft a wastewater agreement for the new wastewater treatment facility and accepting county septic sewage at that facility. So that has been drafted, and I really have to thank our staff and county staff in going through the costs, the infrastructure needed for that service, and coming up with a percentage based on their calculations. So through that study and analyzation by our staff, it worked out to 25.4% of the cost being the county, and the remainder 74.6% being the town. So this agreement was presented to the ICC for review, and they have passed a resolution to rise and report to each respective councils to adopt the agreement. In saying that, it did go to Clearwater County Council last week. I haven't had an opportunity to sit down with Mr. Emmons to fully discuss it, but my understanding is they would like 2 amendments to the agreement, and it'd be brought back to ICC for discussion. One of the amendments was to make it a 10-year agreement versus a 5-year agreement, which administrators were totally fine with. And 5 years was put in the draft agreement because it just mirrors every other agreement we have with Clearwater County. It's always in a 5-year term, such as the airport and the fire service agreement. And then the other amendment would be to review those percentages in a certain time frame in the future once their Leslieville lagoon system is up and running, to determine if the percentages change. So that would probably require greater discussion with Clearwater County, because there's a lot of factors involved in there, like when is it open, when is ours open, and what's going to be the user rate for using the septic receiving stations. So with that, I mean, with the county requesting it go back to ICC, I'll just leave it for council's discussion.
So I wasn't on the original discussion, but I think a 10-year plan with options to renew seems reasonable. It doesn't seem like it's anything out of the ordinary. It would be just one less thing to review in 5 years. I had a question about when we're doing a sewer, like a utilities review anyways. Could we not just keep it as this, and then when we do that utilities review, then adjust our numbers?
So the review would be for the usage, the 2 different facilities, to see if it changes that percentage. So it's not going to be related to the utility fee review we're doing right now.
Okay, so I just thought the fees are they're always attached to usage, so we would have updated usage reviews when we got back from the utility costing review, and wouldn't that be a time that we could put in there?
For review of the percentages?
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think for review of the percentages, the Leslieville Lagoon is not up and running now to receive outside septic. So they would probably need to get it up and running and have a full year of data to collect. Also, plus we would have to have our new facility up and running, so that's not till 2025, to see if that changes any of the usage of it. Because, I mean, it depends what's more convenient for the haulers. Maybe our system is easier to connect to and go, and so they would stay, but maybe Leslieville. So there's a lot of factors in there. Plus, it's also going to be the utility fee attached to using that septic receiving station. I mean, that can influence usage whatsoever. So that needs to be a discussion with Clearwater County. For example, if we say, well, you know what, for the first year of our plan, we're not gonna charge. Well, then we're gonna drive up our percentages, or vice versa if they do. So that needs to be a discussion between the two councils, is do we need to mirror the utility rate or fee to use these systems, or are we just gonna base it on cost recovery for ourselves and they do it for themselves? Because if theirs costs are lower to run, which it probably will be because it's not a mechanical system, it's a lagoon system, you know, that might shift usage also. So you're probably looking at reviewing the percentages probably like in a 3 to 4 year period to get an accurate number.
So if we put this agreement back to a 5, like just as a follow-up, if we put this back to a 5-year, or if we said it was a 4-year term, and then left the percentages as there is, we're not gonna know any different for 4 years anyways, really is what you're saying.
That's correct, yeah.
So if we said we'd like to do a 4-year term with a 10-year option, right? Or something of that kind of words, and keep these percentages, cause we won't know any changes for 4 years anyways, and then pass that and see how that comes back?
Well, I think it needs to go back to the ICC for a full discussion between the two municipalities.
But we have to make a resolution to give to ICC today, right?
Or it just goes back to ICC for that discussion, then comes back up to council for us to fully understand what Clearwater County desires.
Counselor Phillips?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that this has to go back to ICC again for discussion, but I think that's where it's obviously where it's gonna end up because the county didn't ratify it, so, you know, it will have to go back to ICC, and at that point, then we're gonna have to discuss percentages. Is the 25.4 used for now and reviewed again once Leslie goes up? We don't know. I mean, that's all open for discussion, and whether it's a 5-year or 10-year term, again, that'll be negotiating during the ICC, but obviously at this point, it's gonna have to go back to ICC for sure.
So sometimes when we have ICC, we have discussions here of what we like to present on our side, and then we do it that way. When do we want to do that?
That's entirely up to council, your worship, so if you want to have a pre-ICC meeting, then you can do that.
Counselor Hutchinson?
I watched the county meeting and the discussion on that. The 25.4% on the original capital build, so the 2.7 million. I got the feeling, watching that wasn't an issue. It was wording in the agreement that they were unsure about what capital expenses will be incurred after the initial build. And even though it does state in the agreement that that's on each item would be a base by base decision, and county would have the option at that time to agree or disagree. Things came up like, what's the words? The desludging? Things that were more maintenance driven.
Like operational?
Yeah, that they were questioning, you know, does that come up? Will that come up? Are we expected to pay 25.4% of that? So I think a lot of it was just in the wording of how it sounds. They thought they'll be paying 25.4% of all capital for the entire 5-year, 10-year. And it was also noted that, you know, in the past, since they've been, the past agreement, 2013, whenever that started, you know, there was only one request from the town for additional upgraded capital items. And at that time, the county did have the option of either opting in or opting out. So again, it was a case-by-case basis. So it's just some clarity in the wording is kind of what I got from it.
So to move forward, Mr. Crow, go ahead, Councillor Phillips.
Sorry, just a question to Mr. Kraus, and I'm not sure if this may be a Mr. LaFrance's question. The new mechanical system, is there desludging in this new system? Because it's not using a lagoon anymore.
Yeah,
I am going to call up to Mr. LaFrance to answer that. I know we do have centrifuges in the system that takes out quite a bit, but whether the cells, the treatment cells eventually have to be desludged, I would leave it to you.
The sludge is part of the treatment process, so it is cleaned out from the cells as part of the process, and there's dewatering to dewater the sludge, and so it can be transported as waste to the county landfill facility. So it's all part of the mechanical processes within the plant.
Okay, so just for clarification, the only technical capital costs would be then on actual equipment. There would be no desludging, nothing like that anymore.
That is correct, yeah, we're not
Okay.
anticipating further capital costs beyond what's presented there. There's no reoccurring capital costs or one-off, other than equipment replaces, over the next 50 years, eventually that centrifuge will need to be replaced, but that'll be discussed when that happens.
So, Mr. Kraus, just to clarify what our purpose is here right now, it says, that we have to make a motion. So do you want us just to make a motion that it goes back to ICC and then see what sticks?
Yeah, so your worship, just a disclaimer here. So this report was written prior to the county council meeting in anticipation that both parties would adopt the agreement.
Okay.
Now that the county has time to review it and made the discussion, it'd just be a resolution that the wastewater agreement be discussed at the ICC for the amendments requested by Clearwater County.
Okay, so I think if nobody else has a problem, we'll make that motion so we can move on to the next item, because there's no point asking a lot of technical questions if it doesn't have anything to do with where we're at today. So I'll make a motion that we wait and see, sending it back to ICC to see what that committee, that was looking for the word committee, comes back with, and just accept it as information for today. Is that the right way to phrase that? Okay, all in favor of, if there's no further questions or comments, all in favor of that motion? And that, yes, I made the motion. Just to move forward, because there's no point in, right? Okay, so that be set aside. I was just a little confused about alternatives, because obviously that makes sense now. Okay, so, fire rescue agreement, 8.4. Mr. Kraus.
Okay, thank you, your worship. So at the last Tri-ICC meeting, Clearwater County brought forward the fire agreement, requesting some amendments, just more to make it more administratively easier and align with some of our other agreements. So what they have requested from each municipality is to amend the agreement for when the budget is presented. Those dates are November 15th or November 1st, which aligns with our fire service agreement and so forth. So that's presenting to the ICC the budget and so forth. Plus also in the agreement, there's a clause in there where the budget, the operating budget cannot increase any higher than Edmonton's municipal price index is what was drafted into the agreement. That has become very cumbersome for Clearwater County to go by, because this is the Edmonton MPI. They do their own calculations based on their own debt limitations and so forth. So what has been requested is that change to CPI and the average over the last 5 years, which is kind of a suggestion that we're put out to between administrations, because that's typically where we're moving to in our own organization for CPI using a 5-year average. So this was discussed at Tri-ICC, so I'll put it back to the mayor. 'Cause
Okay,
if you wanted to discuss it any further from the ICC meeting.
So really, it's just a matter of adjusting a few dates to make it more policy-driven. And like you said, instead of using the Edmonton's MPI, using the 5-year average of CPI, which both councils or administrations are already using for day-to-day business. So we didn't have much of a discussion at all. It just made sense to make the changes and move forward. Councillor Phillips?
Yeah, just, they were very simplistic changes to the agreement, and the MPI to CPI was that makes total sense. One thing that council may or may not be aware of is at this point in the agreement, the town is paying 23%. Correct, am I correct on that, Mr. Kraus? 23, and the county's paying 77%, and the village is paying 0 at this point. Just for council's information, for fire.
So, and just to clarify that a little bit for the people that weren't there, the reason is that they're moving towards amalgamation, whatever that process looks like, and they're already subsidizing or assisting Caroline with fire service anyways. So just for clarity, so that when they get to the next stage of amalgamation, that the Caroline numbers weren't confusing about what day did it start, what day does it end. It's just, they're still included in the agreement to acknowledge that they're still their own community and that the amount is 0 because they already have that agreement. And we didn't feel that it was necessary to put back that 2% or whatever it was. So is there any other questions or comments about this? Would somebody like to make the motion today? Councillor Caprero?
I'll make a motion that council approves the draft Clearwater Regional Fire Rescue Services Intermunicipal Services Amending Agreement as presented.
Thank you very much. Seeing no further questions or comments on that motion, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of the motion? And that's carried. Thank you very much. That concludes 8.4. So moving on further in the agenda, we had a notice of motion for Councillor Chappelle about a council executive committee. And I'm going to turn that to Councillor Chappelle for further discussion.
Thank you, Your Worship. I put this on the agenda, and what it's about is I feel that we have expertise on our council we're not tapping into. And sometimes we get negative comments, at least with coffee at a council, where people are saying, well, sometimes I don't think we're heard or whatever. And when they are not being heard, they often make reference to town administration. And so with a executive committee, which I'm hoping I can speak to properly, would be to strike a committee of council who would be more involved in terms of sitting in on negotiations or just being present. And in the past, we've had one of these in my previous lifetime on council, which the group would sit in, and typically it was 3 people, but they tried to get 1 or 2 people at any negotiation meeting. And we have people sitting in our council right now who, in my mind, are typically negotiating every day of their lives. And we don't tap into that expertise. I'd like to tap into that. And at the same time, we're building a new water treatment plant, and we have somebody who's in construction on our council, and would make sense to have them involved during the construction of the water treatment plant. My luxury was I sat in as the council representative on the building of the community center, the second ice surface, and the walking trail system. And I think that having a set of elected eyes who are responsible and sitting in on some of those discussions made a whole bunch of sense. And for some reason, it's not here right now. And I would like to have a discussion about the possibility of maybe implementing something to that respect, and tapping into the expertise around the table, and try to move away from where citizens negatively think that our town isn't listening to them. And they think that, I think sometimes because we as council members aren't actively involved at the grassroots level with our community. And so the thinking is that we would set up a council executive committee, which would be 3 members of council, and we'd pick the ones we think would, for what is happening in our community at the present time, would make most sense to sit on that committee. I would like to hear what Mr. Kraus thinks about that, because on the flip side of that, in today's Municipal Government Act, we typically are supposed to set policy and do whatever and let administration do whatever. In terms of taking our direction as council. So as it worked in the past, I'm not so sure it'll work in the future, but it most certainly give another set of eyes that were, to me, common sense in terms of building. you know, if we're building something, I think somebody should be on here. And I look back at Main Street and the arena. We had small dressing rooms in the arena, and if somebody like Councillor Phillips, who was a avid hockey player, would have been there, he would have spied that in seconds, saying, hey, this doesn't work. You know, Main Street is the same thing. You know, somebody who's in construction would say, hey, why isn't there safety rails on Main Street or whatever, hopefully.
Anything about those steps?
I just think the people have the ownership, and the community, being the elected officials, need to be more involved in the community. That's my feeling. So I just open it up there. I'm prepared to table this matter if people want time to think about it, or whatever we decide to do, so.
Counselor Hutchinson.
I struggle with this because I feel that there is definitely a different job that council is doing. We're doing the governance, and operations is set to staff. And I feel that we should have that trust in our staff and our admin to be making the right decisions and to be bringing us the information back on, you know, here's your design of your arena and your dressing rooms. Well, that should have been a council discussion, you know, before the build happens, kind of thing. So I think we are involved. We should be involved. But I question a committee like this. I would question, well, why did it dissolve last time around? And I struggle with either all council being on it or none. I don't think that it would be appropriate to just pick 3 for whatever reason. So that's my feelings on it.
So I just have a couple questions, and I think I'm gonna just ask Mr. Kraus. So we used to have a negotiating committee up until the beginning of the term, and now it's kind of morphed into ICC. So I think ICC works quite well with 3 members, because then we have confidence that not everybody has to be able to make every single meeting, and you know, it'd be just work like a committee. So I'm fine with that, but I'm not sure if I necessarily see the exact situation, but that it would apply at. So, Mr. Kraus, do you ever see a situation where this would apply at? Like when we were having a discussion with, say, for example, Roar, and would it have, and it's too bad Mr. Schrader is not here today, but would it have been beneficial to those discussions to have somebody in the room so that they're there, and would that have assisted, do you think? You know, like, I'm not really sure where we would use this, but do you think that would be helpful if someone was in the room when we were having that negotiation, for example?
So, Your Worship, you know, with Roar, administration consulted with council, got direction from council, and carried forward those wishes. If there was a councillor in the room, I don't think it would have changed the result in any way. I guess where I'm struggling with this, I mean, we had Mr. Cuff in, who gave a one-day speech on roles and responsibilities, and council adopted the roles statements that Mr. Cuff provided and posted on our website. So I'm just struggling to see where this is fitting in. So, and maybe I need more clarity from Councillor Shippold on this. You know, construction projects, I mean, we have engineers and staff. If there's a design issue, we can bring it back to council as a whole. But I'm not seeing the role that you're envisioning, so I guess I need just more clarity.
So if I look at Roar, for example, sometimes if they feel they're not being heard, and there's even a councillor sitting in the room, it takes away that ability to say, well, the town staff didn't hear from us. I guess what I'm trying to do is remove negativity, if there should be negativity. And in terms of construction, I'm not saying that the town staff are not doing a good job. What I'm saying is that sometimes another set of eyes on any project of any size, and you look at the expertise of some of the people around the table. I think that we just don't tap into that expertise. And, you know, if the rodeo board is meeting and they want to meet on something, I mean, that was one of the ones that I heard negativity from, that they felt that they weren't being heard. If there's a couple of town councilors there, they thought that they weren't being heard? Well, if the councilors are there, then it's up to the councilors to make sure that comes from them to us as a council. I just think that is it an application for everything? No. But back in the day when we used it for anything that we felt was going to be contentious. So if all of a sudden there was a group that, I mean, there's some things that are straightforward. I mean, ICC is much that vehicle where we have 3 people who do the negotiations on behalf of council and bring stuff back and forth. I guess that is a perfect example of what I would see happening in other situations. You know, when we talk to the people for the, you know, Push Park, when they come here, would they be happier just talking to a couple, 3 councillors about it and saying, hey, here's where we're at? I don't know. I just toss it out there. It used to work, and it got council more involved and the expertise of council more involved in the functioning of the town. If we don't want that, then we don't want that, you know?
Councillor Caprero?
I'm just wondering, if maybe this conversation, just because we're missing a counselor today, if maybe we should table for now, and then at least that way when we're all here, we can all hear it and have input. And just because you had mentioned if people wanted time to digest and think about it, maybe we bring it back when all of us are here and have that conversation.
Councillor Boniface?
I can certainly see the benefits of it. We all bring different skills to the table and have different lives and that kind of thing. I can certainly see it as, I don't think it would be as in the capacity to be so much involved in the situation as, like Councillor Schipple said, being there so that the people feel that they're being heard, but also just another set of eyes, just to oversee the project and then bring back information to present to the council, or at least put into a report to provide to the council. I can see benefits to it. It's not that we're not trusting the staff to do it, it's just another set of eyes. I know for me personally on my sites, I prefer having everybody involved in a project rather than just me looking after it, because I can't see everything at all times. So.
Councillor Phillips?
Yeah, so I'm just kind of trying to wrap my head around it. Having a counselor or council at a negotiating table, is that more of a perception thing? Is it, you know, it's not going to change the outcome of the negotiation, I don't believe. Is it just a perception that if there was a counselor there, that this group may think that decision was endorsed by council, whereas if a counselor wasn't there, it wasn't endorsed by council? That's a question. And you know, back to Councillor Hutchinson about our lanes. You know, we're in the governance lane and administration is in the operational lane, and sometimes those lanes shouldn't be crossed for obvious reasons. Sometimes they can merge together. But yeah, that would be my question. I'd like to wrap my head around this more for sure, and I'd like to, you know, it'd be beneficial to have everybody here on the discussion just to see what we do and don't need. But my big concern is just which lanes are we in? Are we in the operational lane or the governance lane?
So what was your first question? Because I actually want to answer it from Mr. Schipple, that first question that you had.
The first question about perception, is that what
Yeah.
you're talking about?
Yeah, that was the question. You said, I'd like an answer to this question, and
Well,
then you
and
said the next question, and
yeah.
then I lost what the first question was.
Yeah, just the perception question. Is it just a perception thing from the public that, you know, because it's being, an agreement is being negotiated by our admin, that it's perceived not coming from council because there's no council representation? That was my question, whether it's a real thing or not.
Did you want to address an answer to that question?
I don't have an answer, but my thought process is that if anytime you get an elected official before any group of people, It gives that, I think, more substance. Like when I'm talking to somebody and I have an elected official there, I feel more confident knowing, and it's probably just a feeling. I mean, it's a perception. Because at the end of the day, I mean, it takes all 7 councillors to make any decision, or the majority of council to make a decision. So often I think just having that elected official there will change the tone of some people. It's easier to beat up town staff who you got nothing to lose against, versus if there's a councillor in a room and you know, well, hey, if I upset that councillor, chances are I'm not going to get past first base, you know, when it comes decision time. So I think more than anything, I think it is a perception, because and ultimately you as a councillor have, or me as a councillor we don't have hammer. And the other thing I think that it gives, I would hope they would give staff the feeling that they're getting more support, because they've got a councillor there who hopefully would support them in what they're doing, and take that route. So I guess I'm trying to remove the negative comment that I hear often around, well, hey, I did this and it didn't feel good. And I'm thinking this could be one of the ways that it gets removed.
So, would you like someone to make I'll make a motion today to table the discussion to the July 18th. Is that the day that you're at a funeral?
Yes.
So, the next meeting in August 1st, so if we could table this discussion to August 1st, 2023, so that all council members are here to see if this is the right direction we want to go in. Anyways, what you have there is exactly what I want to say.
To that motion, do we want any input from management to say, hey, this is crazy or not crazy, or toss it out the door? You're stepping out of your lanes.
So I think maybe the discussion needs to be, no, I'll open up to Mr. Kraus, but I do think this discussion is more based on customer service level satisfaction and less on, do we need to be at a negotiating table? And communication, like, and that's gonna be addressed really on the 18th. Kinda, sorta. Is that where you were going with that?
No, I just don't feel that we should be putting that kind of, we shouldn't be putting staff on the hot spot to be saying if it's something that they think is good or not. It's a council decision, and staff shouldn't be pulled into our direction until we direct.
Okay, so I'm gonna challenge everybody to reread the council and the administration's duties as given by Kraus, and we'll go, Cuff, to see if this is the right movement for us. We all have time in the next 3 or 4 weeks. If there's anything else, seeing nothing, I'll call that resolution to table the discussion until August 1st to a vote. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thank you very much. So we're moving on then in the agenda for correspondence for action. Invitation for Bowden Days Parade, July 15th, 2023. And does anybody have any discussion on that item? I think, this is another service level. It's come up a bunch of times since service level. I don't have availability on that day. And I think, would we just like to accept for information that item for today as for discussion, or does someone feel strongly differently? Councillor Hutchinson.
Yeah, I think that, again, I've mentioned it before, perhaps at service level, we have all of these parade invites that we've gotten over the past couple months, and look at them at service level and be strategic in deciding which one we're going to, or which ones and when, and decide that in service level instead of every 2 weeks getting another exception, so.
That's exactly what I was gonna say, so.
Yeah. So would somebody like to make, Counselor
Yep,
Phillips, did you want to make the motion
Yep,
then?
I'll make the motion to accept item 9.1, the Boating Days Parade as information.
Thank you very much. So seeing no further discussion on that item, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor? And that's carried. Counselor Phillips, did you want to make the same motion for 9.2?
Sure, if there's no further discussion on item 9.2, I'd like to make a motion to accept item 9.2, the Town of Bentley Parade as information.
Thank you very much. If seeing there's no further discussion on that agenda item, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor? And that's carried. So 9.3, invitation for Confluence Heritage Society. I have the whole thing right here somewhere. So it's the weekend of the Battle of the Rockies Chuck Wagon races. It's the Saturday. They have a newly constructed play fort space at the Rocky Mountain House National Historic Site. And they're doing a presentation on August 19th at 12 noon. If we could bring greetings and say a few words. And we're also welcome to attend the pancake breakfast in conjunction with the Chuck Wagon races beforehand. So the reason I kind of want to talk about it is this is another opportunity for all of us. We're always talking about team building and supporting our community and doing something together. I certainly don't mind attending this, and but I just want to put it out. The invitation is to everyone to attend, and you know, we're always looking for ways we could have like get-togethers and team building, and then these things come across our desks, and I'm just encouraging everyone to see if they can be able to attend. So I certainly will be able to attend, so we could have administration reply that. Is it because it's in the county that we need a thing? Because normally I just go to stuff. Mr. Kraus?
No, Your Worship, it's just a invite to all of council, so there
Okay.
should be a council discussion.
Okay. Does anybody else have any other further comments? Okay, Counselor Phillips?
I'll make a motion that Mayor Bache and any council members that are available to attend the Confluence Heritage Society grand opening, that are able to, are encouraged to.
Thank you very much. Seeing those no further discussions or comments on that motion, I'll call that to vote. All in favor? And that's carried. So 9.4 is a letter from Municipal Affairs. And again, they really have highlighted, underlined, and bold fonted the importance of that it is directly relevant to the Minister of Municipal Affairs, and the department will be given priority. So when I would take direction from Mr. Kraus, but I don't feel that we have anything necessarily on our books at this moment that specifically requires the Minister of Municipal Affairs to be involved with. Do you have something that I don't know about?
No, Your Worship, I do not, so.
Okay. So my recommendation is just to accept for information unless somebody else has something that would be specifically for the Minister of Municipal Affairs. Councillor Phillips.
I'm not sure if this is directly relevant to the Minister of Municipal Affairs, because he was the Minister of Transportation back when the original Highway 11 twinning project was announced. I don't know if it's worth a discussion again to him about this or not, but that would be the only relevant topic that I would think of.
So I looked up their website to see what his portfolio specifically, it doesn't, it's really specific on there of what his, and I think he's not even in that department anymore, so I would be fine. Did somebody want to make a motion to accept for information? Unless you want to hear back from Mr. Kraus about that, but it's not, I don't think it's a Minister of Municipal Affairs.
No, so that would be Minister of Transportation, and council has already drafted and sent a letter to the minister for a meeting on Highway 11. So.
Counselor Boniface?
I would make a motion that we accept this for information purposes.
Thank you. Do you want us to write a letter back to them? Or will that be done with, yeah, okay, sorry, just checking. If there's no further questions or comments on Counselor Boniface's motion, I'll call that to a vote. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Correspondence for information. I wanted to bring forward to everyone's attention 10.6 before we accept for information. So this is the letter that one of the many people talking about the share shed, they actually wrote a letter, and the person that brought it was from town. But they had said, I feel exactly what this person said, even though this person is from the county. She brought the letter and she was in town, and so I just want to bring it up for everybody's attention so that we all can see that we're still getting, and I know we're working on some solutions, but I just wanted to bring that up so that it's noticed. Does anybody want to have any further discussion on this 10.6? I don't see any. Councillor Hutchinson, did you want to make a motion?
Well, I just wanted to comment first that I believe we've got this on the agenda for our strategic or service level review. So it will be looked at. It's not just being ignored by council.
Right.
And I guess if there's no more comments, then I will accept items 10.1 through 10.9 for information.
Thank you very much for the motion, and I just wanted to check with council. There's no further questions or comments on any of the agenda items. Seeing none, I'll call that motion to a vote. All in favor of that motion, and that's carried. Thank you very much. So that concludes 10. Moving on to 11.1, the mayor's report for July 4th, 2023. And is there any questions or comments on that report? Councillor Hutchinson.
I didn't find any of your attachments.
Yes, so Tiffany emailed me that I only saw the email last night. I will go and find those attachments and put them on for the next month. I'm sorry.
Perfect.
Yeah, I don't know
I
how
was
that happened.
searching and searching.
I
so.
did it before I went on holidays, and I didn't get her email that she didn't receive them until I got back from holidays, and I just didn't have time to print them this morning and find them, so I will look after that for next month. I did it a couple days early. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Boniface?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept the mayor's report as presented with the attachments that are still coming.
Thank you very much. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Councillor Boniface, did you want to do a verbal report for July?
No, there's nothing from me. I say I don't attend much on the meetings.
Okay, all right, no problem. I see that it's not on there this month, so I just want to give you the
I missed my
opportunity.
deadline.
Oh,
I
did
did
you?
the
Oh.
trucking, but I didn't get it in.
No, that, I didn't want to point that out. I just wanted to ask if you had something verbally you wanted to add. So, because Councillor Ald's not here, I'll go to Councillor Caprero. Do you have anything you wanted to supplement?
No, I'm okay,
Okay,
unless anyone has any questions.
Councillor Hutchinson?
Yes, it seems like it was forever ago that we attended the FCM, but it was a really great conference this year. Food was not so good. But just to bring your attention to the new FCM president, Scott Pierce, actually all of the keynote speakers are available on the FCM website. You can go on there and listen to all of Scott Pierce did a very inspirational speech, and it made you feel like, you were being an elected official. It was a position that we should be proud of, and we should hold our heads high and not listen to all the naysayers about being here, and that we do a good job and everybody should be proud of themselves. So that's available there. The Alberta Association of Police Governance Conference, I attended after that here in town. Big shout out to the town for hosting. There's a lot of great information coming out of that. Then I did the Summer Municipals Leader Caucus virtually. This is the first time they had done it in virtually online. And it was great just hearing about all of the things that Alberta municipalities are working towards for us. The sustainable funding for wastewater. There was the long-term planning on license management plans for water. The future of municipal government projects. So I put the attachment on there for anybody to have a look at and read through. It's a good document to read. And again, on the Alberta Municipalities website, there's links to be able to go and watch this one that was live.
Did he do all the water puns again?
Oh, yeah.
He had,
Runs were like crazy.
he had a million, when he did the bid presentation, he had a million water puns. Like everything was a water pun. It was
Yeah.
funny.
There was, I forget what else Staff Appreciation Barbecue. Again, it was great. We all most of us attended, and it's always good to hang out with staff and play some games, read some funny names, and just have a good time together. URNT at Rocky Learning Council, that was, Councillor Chappelle was there with us as well, so that was a good one. And that's about it. Anything else is in my report.
Can I ask a question?
Mhm.
Is the Seniors Lodge gonna have another show and shine event? Like, cause I think certainly council would benefit by being invited to that. I randomly went because Carrie was at a meeting that we were at and he was telling me about it and I stopped there and I saw that you were there and I just think that it would have been a nice event for all of council. Do they have more events like that coming up?
That was for Seniors Week. They do have random events that are ongoing, but it's usually just for lodge staff and family. They're still kind of at that point where I think a lot of them are unsure about other people coming into the lodge. But I haven't heard anything more about a show and shine.
So this was held and there are people in council that have family members in the lodge that they just didn't get the information. So if something like that comes up, because it was outside, right?
Yeah.
And we didn't actually have to enter the lodge, just wondering if you could.
Yeah, they didn't
forward
put
us-
an outside invitation to
Oh, okay.
to anybody. And same with the pancake breakfast that morning. It was to the Rocky Senior Housing Board. And even with that, it's, the seniors are still sitting at their own tables. We're still
Right.
sitting at a separate table. But
Right.
if there's something else, but so far there's nothing coming up
Yeah.
on the books for that.
Thank you. Does anybody, did you have more to add? No, that was everything. Did anybody else have any questions or comments? Okay, so we'll move to Councillor Phillips. Did you want to comment on your report?
Yeah, just June was an extremely busy month. Quite a few things on the go. Just one of the highlights at the FCM conference was the 3 resolutions that were adopted by FCM. I just wanted to kind of go over those really quickly. So the first one was FCM was going to be advocating for funding and programs for the mental health crisis that's going on in Canada right now. Another one was the FCM is going to advocate both federal and provincial governments for assisted funding for homeless issues. And the third one, which is probably one of the most important ones, is to advocate for a modernized fiscal framework, basically funding for municipalities, because right now the funding for municipalities is based on a 100-year-old system of taxation, and that's basically our form of how we can get money for keeping the roads run and water running and rec centers going, and that's how it's always been. And right now, with so many more things from homelessness to mental health to addictions to so many social issues and social needs that are hitting municipalities, and municipalities being asked to deal with it, FCM is advocating for a modernized fiscal framework so that we can come to the table and go to the federal government and the provincial governments and say, hey, the funding model isn't working. We're being asked to do more with no more funding. How can we get more access to the funding? How can we make this different and more equitable for municipalities so that we can do some of this work. So that was one of the exciting ones that they're going to be advocating for.
Can I ask you a question? What else was the discussion around homelessness? Because when you, I'm on a couple committees there that are meeting periodically, as well as involved with our local center. It's not just homelessness. Did they address like the housing shortage and affordable housing?
Yes.
All in the resolution?
Yes.
Okay.
So there, the fact of, I'm just gonna use Toronto and Vancouver as examples
Absolutely.
where you can't buy a house. If you don't already own one, you can't, like literally cannot buy a house or purchase a house. So yes, that was discussed as well, the different types of housing that need to come on the market, the lack of housing that's already on the market for all the new immigrants that are coming into Canada, and just the fact that we don't have the housing structures ready for them to move into. That was also discussed as well, but it was just nice to see these three key points that FCM is going to be advocating the federal and provincial governments. It's a move in the right direction.
And those are on the website now? Sometimes they don't post it right away.
It should be on the FCM website, I would think, by now.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any questions for, was that everything on there? Yeah. Was anybody else have any questions for Councillor Phillips? Councillor Chappelle, did you have any questions or comments about your report? Okay, so I will make a motion to accept for information 11.2 reports, Councillor Auld, Councillor Caprero, Councillor Hutchinson, Councillor Phillips, and Councillor Chappelle. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Thank you very much. So we're moving quite along considering it's a 3-page agenda today. I just think that we should just all have like a thank you very much to Mr. Kraus before he gets going, to have us so very well organized with all his documentation before we go to his action list. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. So for the action list, so in regards to the medical clinic, town administration has met with county administration and discussed the options that council is considering. County administration will be going back to their council for a discussion. And pending that, we'll see what the next steps are. You know, it might be an ICCC type of item to go to. The next one, so we'll be going out to an RFP for kenneling services, so the council's aware of those discussions. And we have plans in place right now, how we're handling it. And then the final one, we're still in the process of just getting internet into the RCMP detachment, waiting for their approval, and we can take the next steps on the criminal record checks from there. So, and that is it, Your Worship. That's our 3 outstanding items.
Thank you very much. Did anybody have any questions or comments about the action list? Did anybody want to make a motion? Councillor Phillips.
I'll make a motion to accept item 12.1, the action list, as information.
Thank you very much. All in favor of that motion? And that's carried. Do we have any administrative inquiries today? Councillor Boniface.
I do. It's a thought in an idea, and I do not expect an answer today or at any time necessarily, but it is a thought. We're always talking about transparency, and that's a big word that gets thrown around here, but I get a lot of people talking to me, I guess I'll say, that they don't understand why a certain decision was made. Councillor Shipbolt said that we do not celebrate our successes enough, and I believe that entirely. We do not celebrate our successes. We have an amazing staff, we have a great council. Decisions are made quite often on the money that is available, and not everybody understands that. And I think maybe it's time that we start putting it out there. To me, if you want to be transparent, you just throw the information out there. I realize probably doesn't have the time to do it. We've already discussed an article in the paper and that kind of thing. It's not something that right now they have the time for. But I'd like us all to think about it for the future. I think if we were to have a small article once a month, at the end of the month in the paper, that said, this is what your council did this past month. This is why we made the decision we made. So if everybody understood that a decision was made, that decision A if we had done that, would have cost the taxpayer 1.5%. That would have increased your average cost of the taxes this much to do it. Everybody would understand. When you tell people what it's gonna cost them to do something, it hits home. And we're always getting beat up on Facebook and the twits and all that, so, you know, maybe if we put it out there, celebrate our successes, explain decisions, provide the information. Yes, they can watch the meetings, yes, they can YouTube them and everything else. And there's a lot more people like me out there that do not like these things and will pick up a paper long before they'll ever turn on a computer. So, especially considering most of our population is more my age. So, you know, I just like us to think about it. It's not necessarily something I'm asking staff to do, but I think if we were to at least put it out there, maybe at a service level, it could be discussed again. Just how could we handle this so that we can get the information out to the people? I had a person knock on my door to discuss a thing about roar. Like, so, you know, again, if those decisions were out there for the community, because there's sure lots of negative stuff. So maybe if we told them why the decision was made, it would be, people would go, oh, I get that. So, just a thought.
So your administrative inquiry was to, like,
Is
Could
this
we-
something that could ever be done? Is this something that could be done?
like for kind of PR, because we did talk about, you know, the shovel opening ceremony and the pickleball ceremony. Like we should have maybe done a shovel breaking ground ceremony. I'd really like to see us do like and celebrate those wins.
Celebrate those wins. Here's a perfect example that I can't talk about. People are complaining about the swimming pool. Well, what a lot of people don't understand is the swimming pool was built in the 80s. It is now, you know, a 40-plus-year-old building. It does have problems. There is things with it. The town is doing everything within their power to rectify those issues and those problems in a timely manner to make everybody happy. But there's equipment problems. I have that every day. Yes, I need that new furnace, but they no longer have that brand or everybody's out of it. It's a supply chain issue, whatever you want to call it. Sometimes it's having the expertise or the technical knowledge on site at the time to get the job done in a timely manner. Our staff could call a company and say, we need a new boiler in our swimming pool, and it could take, great, get you in there, we can come in December. But that's what we got to do. Again, if the town people were told, you know, yes, we swim at the pool too. We know the water's cold in the shower. We're doing everything we can to fix it. These are the issues we're having. Put it out there to the community, and maybe it will, and you're never going to stop the negativity, but it will maybe slow it down a little bit if people had it up front what it was. If you want to be transparent, just instead of, I don't know, I think the word's overused, but I think just put it out there, put the information out there, and just cut it to the chase and say it black and white. No more sugarcoating stuff. Just tell it like it is. And if they don't like it, too bad.
So, Mr. Kraus, I think I'll just step in and
Please.
say, as administrative inquiry, is there something that we could do for different communication with the public? I know that Laura does, because the swimming pool thing I saw come up, I'm on Facebook. So I follow our town page and stuff comes up, but I think the inquiry, if you don't mind me paraphrasing, is what else could we do to get information that's positive to kind of offset some of the things that we're dealing with out there? That
Your quick answer, I need another communication officer for the workload,
Okay.
is my quick answer. And I think even through the, strategic planning exercise, the development of a communication strategy, when something happens, this is what we do, more formalize it and put it into a plan versus us being a little more reactionary
Right.
versus proactive. I mean, we try to be as proactive as we can, but we have just, limitations, lots going on, limitations on staffing levels. So,
Yeah.
but and I think it's come up in our strategic planning sessions too, that a second communication officer is, you know, well needed, because we're in that age now where people want the information and they want it quickly and now. So, and transparency is becoming more and more of an issue, and to be more transparent, we need to get more information out, and it's not that we don't want to or it's not there, it's just
Yeah.
limited on
I,
manpower.
I don't think it was a criticism. I
Oh,
think
no,
it
no,
was
we're not
a,
taking,
Certainly
like,
not.
how can we improve this? How can we improve
Yeah.
it? So, along those lines, Mr. Coase, would we bring it up at service level, or would it be a strat plan? Like where would we fit that in as counselors if we think that should be a priority
For,
for putting money in the budget and helping you to do that? Would we wait till service level and then discuss it then?
well,
Would we-
Your Worship, so to be honest with you, I mean, it's been a discussion during strat planning about additional communications. I am planning to bring in a request to council for additional position sometime this summer.
Okay.
For 2023, it would not be a budget impact, basically because we received $56,000 more in MSI operating, and that money has not been allocated in our budget. So if we were to proceed with it this year, it would not be a budget, but I would be bringing a request for an additional position to council to consider.
Okay, so I think Councillor Boniface, did you have a follow-up for that? No, that,
I do, just to say, I think administration's doing an amazing job with it, and I commend them for everything that they do. That, it wasn't a criticism, it was, how can we do
better,
better that
different.
old guys like me can understand it? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so did we have any more thank you, Tina. Sorry.
So on Market on Main, I attended with Councillor Phillips and Councillor Auld, and there was an inquiry by a resident who is in a rental, and she said, how do I get a green bin? And I says, well, every home is entitled to have a green bin, a black bin and recycling service, and she said that they're not allowed to have one. So I just wanted to know what kind of direction does this something that is a landlord-tenant issue, or does the town, can she just call and get a green bin? What kind of process would that be?
Just before you answer that, do you have her address? Okay. Do you want me to step out because of all the communication between our properties and the department? Maybe I would.
Well, Your Worship, I'm not sure if this is a
Okay.
property of yours or not.
Okay. All right.
Just for clarification, she rambled an address off to me, but it meant nothing to me. I have no idea who,
No,
what, where, when.
that's fine.
I was just addressing a concern that she's spent a long time telling me that she's got to go around her neighborhood putting things
Yeah.
in other green bins. So
Did you?
That's
So-
all I said. I just wanted some clarity.
Just for clarification, does the property owner have a black bin, like for garbage pickup?
The rental that she's in does have a black bin.
So if the property has a black bin, then they can have an organics bin plus recycling pickup. So it's only, yeah, so if they do have that already, then that's a service they can have. And so it would be, because the utility account is in the name of the owner, the request should come from the owner of the property for us to supply a green bin.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other administrative inquiries? Well, seeing none, we'll move forward to, are there any notices of motion today? Seeing none, I'll move forward. There's no closed session items. So seeing that there's nothing else on the agenda, I will adjourn today's meeting. Meeting adjourned. Thank you very much.